Hey, it's Trav and Bias back with you again the day after the 4th of July, and we're getting back into some sports because it never stops. We are the Sports Bag Bros podcast. It's our 21st episode. For those of you who might have missed the first 20, this is 21, and we're all about getting what you want to have in the sports world, the conversation that most of us would like to have collectively. Today was Wednesday, and this is a day we like to kind of sit down on one particular sport for the most part unless there's some serious breaking news. And we want to get down to it because we realize that there are topics out there that have some intrigue. And Bias has come up with a topic of intrigue. But before he says that, he can say this, Bias. What's going on?
What's up? I hope everybody had a great and safe 4th of July. I don't know who's back to work, but I'm off today. Hopefully, y'all had a great time. It's good to be back. What's up? YouTube, Spotify, iHeart, Apple Podcasts, everywhere you can find us.
Yep. And with all of that said, so we get to the sports immediately. The reason why you hit the thumbnail, the reason why you saw it and clicked on this is because Bias has come up with the Denver Nuggets versus pretty much the world, recent champions. And who are those champions?
Well, we're going to go back to recent champs 2 years ago, Warriors, the year before that, Bucks and Raptors and the Bubble Lakers. Then we'll go back a little bit further. Spurs team with Kawhi and older Duncan, LeBron James and Heat, 2013 and 2011 Dirk.
Yep, and we're going to come to a conclusion with that, or at least try to, within reason and being less biased, no pun intended, trying to get to the bottom line to see how this Denver Nuggets team might have stacked up against those past championship teams, recent past championship teams. So we don't have to go back to Walt Clyde Frazier or even the Showtime Lakers or even the Chicago Bulls. We're talking about people you probably know about. It's still fresh in your memory. So we'll get it down to it right now. We start off with the 2022 Golden State Warriors. They were 53-29 that season, third in the West. They won their championship. They were 16-6 in the finals. They got their win. What's the deal with that?
So let's just give a reminder. The Warriors, they had, of course, Curry, Clay, Draymond, Jordan Poole, Kevon Looney. They got major contributions from Kuminga that year, Gary Payton II, even Juan Toscano Anderson contributed. Otto Porter Jr. also. Steph carried them, but he got some help along the way as well.
Absolutely, and they ended up winning and beating Boston. 4-2 in the series. At the same time, Jordan Poole, as you mentioned, was there, and Andrew Wiggins. I think that's the game that really helped him out. I think the year before.
Oh, did I not mention Wiggs? My bad.
Yeah, Andrew Wiggins, but Jordan Poole. This is the game that got him the contract we thought would make him a mainstay in Golden State. And now we see, after all is said and done, just one season later, pretty much he's out there in another team. So, but anyways, he really made a splash in that. And how would you compare these two teams? What would Denver have to worry about when it came to this Golden State team? We already know the perimeter is like ground zero for them. But how does this game go?
It's tough because Jokic is going to be a mismatch. If Looney's on him, especially, he's slow. If Draymond's on him, he's too little. So Jokic is going to be a big problem regardless. But in 22, Steph was on another level. Yeah. So they would have to counteract Steph. He averaged 31 in the finals, but when it was the finals were in doubt, he took control of that series. He dropped 43 in game 5, I believe it was. And in the closeout game, he was phenomenal. So, with those guys having that championship experience, I see this would probably go 7 games, but I think the Warriors would edge it out in the end.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the explosiveness of Steph Curry, but not only him, the explosiveness and the identity of that Golden State team as well. They did play Denver back then. How much better did Joker get between then and now, which is pretty much just 1 year? They were lost 4-1 in the series back then. Now it's 7-3, or now it's 4-3 if they came together right now.
Yeah, I believe so. They didn't have Murray. So, Murray makes a big difference.
Big difference.
When Batman has to roll without Robin, it's tough. But when Robin's there, he has his back, they ride together. As we saw this past year, they pretty much dominated. And maybe dominating the finals was partially because the Heat wasn't, I don't want to say worthy because they beat everybody, but in the long run, they weren't the best team in the East. So could
No.
they provide the stiffest challenge? I don't think so. But, they did what they did, and you have to respect it.
Yeah, and as you mentioned with the Batman and Robin analogy, you have to also understand that even in that year, Jokic was going to the second of his two MVPs. He could have had a third this season pass, but he was going to his second. So he was already there in terms of an overall player. And that stumbling block was having that other guy who became Jamal Murray to go over the hump and play and now win a championship as they did. I mean, the chips fell where they may because Miami getting there and not another team that was more explosive, especially offensively, didn't challenge them as much. You know what? They were able to put the clamps on a team like Miami who couldn't find too much offense or at least not consistent offense. And we saw how it played out.
Right. And as far as duels go, Jokic and Murray actually scored more than Steph and the second leading scorer for the Warriors. But the Warriors, as I mentioned, they got contributions from a bunch of guys. Wiggins averaged, I believe, 17 points a game. Clay averaged 18. Poole averaged 13 and a half. Looney provided like 7 or 8. Draymond, all those guys I mentioned, they all contributed. So I think they were deeper. In the finals, we saw Bruce Brown get off. We saw Christian Braun do his thing,
Mm-hmm.
but they'd have a better second string to go against the Warriors. And I think the Warriors had more depth, more consistent depth, and that's why I think they would pull it out.
Yeah, I think so too, because they had the offense. I think it all came down to offense. Denver can hang offensively, they would have two problems to worry about because that wasn't too bad of a defensive team in which Golden State had as well. I think, Gary Payton Jr. was also on that team. He
Mhm.
was providing the defense as well. In fact, that was got him out of town and he came back ultimately.
They had to
But
bring them back.
yeah, they had to bring him back. They didn't get back to where they were, but he's back, and now we're going to see what goes on this upcoming season here. We can agree on that one. I think the Golden State Warriors of 2022, they defeat the Denver Nuggets. And I don't know. I think it could be a 4-2, 6 games. I don't know about the 7 games. I think 4-2, only because the offense will be something. And we've seen Denver when they've gone down against a team that doesn't score, obviously lost the game.
I just think Jokic was on another level this year.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't have the pressure of being the MVP. I don't know what it was, but he stepped his game up in the playoffs. And I don't want to say they'd get bounced in 5 or 6. I honestly think it would go 7.
You know what? Aaron Gordon started off the playoffs doing well. He's been in the league for a while. He didn't really step up as much in the finals as he did throughout the playoffs themselves. So I think that the inconsistency of players like that may lend itself to a 4-2, 6 game series. But nevertheless, it's still Denver will probably go down to this Golden State team.
I just want to point out something. Denver averaged 104.6 points per game against the Heat, and the Dubs averaged 104.8 points per game against the Celtics. So points per game was really close.
You know what? Points per game was close. And the good point that you brought up also using the Celtics, they're a defensive team as well. We already know that a Pat Riley managed, coached, or anything that has to do with Pat Riley is going to have a defensive element to it. And we've known the Miami Heat for doing exactly that, regardless of the coaching. So we know that the identity of the Miami Heat, Pat Riley had defense like he did in New York, not necessarily out there in Laker Town like he did back in the day. Yeah, but that's a good comparison. Two defensive teams doing what they've done and still pretty much similar scoring while winning.
Right. So moving on, we got the 2021 Bucks led by
Yes.
Giannis, of course, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, who I think is a very underrated player. I mean, I take that dude on my team anytime. But they also had Connaughton, Bobby Portis, Brooke Lopez, and PJ Tucker got his chip that ring. That guy's been on a lot of teams trying to contribute.
Defensive stalwart, get you a job every time.
Yeah, PJ Tucker was on that team.
So that 2021 Bucks team, 46-26. They only played 72 games that season because it was shortened. That was the first season after real COVID passed. You still had the lingering effects of COVID. So 72 games were played. perhaps an asterisk by this championship. Maybe, maybe not. There was a lot of nostalgia involved because Milwaukee got their first championship in 50 years. But nevertheless, they went out there like everyone else under the same circumstances and became the champions that year. 46-26 on the season. They were third in the East, but they were first in scoring. So that was a pretty voluminous team in terms of their offense. But we also know that the signature of that same team and that same series or that overall playoffs was Kevin Durant's big foot. So
The toe.
the toe, man, his toe. If not for the toe, does it still end the same? Do we still get a chance to compare the Denver team from this year to that same Milwaukee Bucks team?
I mean, how could we ever answer that?
I know
It's
just one of those questions you throw out
yeah,
there.
I'm sure. I'm sure that hounds KD every once in a while, in the back of his mind. But as far as these Bucks, Giannis was on a mission that year, like
You already know.
much like Jokic was on this year. And it would be interesting to see if Jokic. Well, I don't think Jokic would guard Giannis, but it would be interesting to see if Giannis would try and guard Jokic and try and slow him down. He was a monster defensively that year.
Oh,
If
yeah,
you remember that block shot on Aiden's alley-oop dunk,
bro.
that to me, because of the circumstances where he has to take the jumper away from Booker, see the alley-oop pass, turn and run over to block the alley-oop dunk, that's just incredible. I can't think of another two players that could do that. Maybe one or two guys in the history of basketball could have made that play.
See, that's how you get the name the Greek Freak. You're such an athletic freak, you can do those things like that. There aren't too many people, maybe Will Chamberlain, in terms of being an athlete, can do something like that. But as we're talking today with other super athletes on other teams, being out there, the Greek Freak got it done. But I tell you what, that Bucks team was a good team, but they got hot at the right time, as we know, and it was they were third in the East, so there were obviously teams out there that were at least seeding wise were better. They were able to weather the storm, and as I've already mentioned, they played those Brooklyn Nets and were able to pull it off. I mean, come on now. They did lose by nearly 40 points in one of those games when finally all three guys were able to play together for the Brooklyn Nets.
Hey, every team has a bad day. Boston got the Lakers one year by 20 something, and the Lakers still won the series. I think it was Memorial Day Massacre. It happens in the long series. One team has a good night, the other team has a bad night, but great teams are able to put those bad nights behind them and bounce back. So, kudos to the Bucks. They didn't fold.
No, definitely kudos to the Bucks. I wanted to just point out that because those players were together, finally, as we know, that the three so-called big three between Harden and Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, they already played with each other for about 20 games, less than 20 games throughout the time they were there. When they finally were there and they were doing what the fans expected when they came together, they got that blowout. But what happens? Someone gets injured and they don't play again. So we're talking about if those three stay together, of course, revisionist history. If those three stay together, does this Bucks team, do they get a chance or do they get another 40-point, close to 40-point blowout, etc.? Maybe not, but I can see it being a hardest path for the Bucks.
I look at the history of James Harden, and any team he's on, I don't see them going away. I'm sorry. I just don't. That's his history. Until he changes it, that's what it is.
You know what? I thought they just had the talent on that team to overcome James Harden and his regular season points. Hey, look at Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Definitely much better than James Harden in every sense of the game. I thought they had enough to overcome, but the injury bug, of course, was the reason why. And that Bucks team, they played 72 games, and in the playoffs they were 16-7. They beat the Miami. He swept them in the first round, and of course the 4-3 game or series against the Brooklyn Nets and the Hawks. After Trae Young embarrassed New York, he moved on, and 4-2, they would end up getting beaten by the Bucks as well. And in the finals, they took care of the Suns after being down there as well. And was it a Chris Paul being injured deal, or was it just them being the better team? They caught a lot of breaks that year, man. I mean, we don't got to look far back, but pointing out specific players and how dominant they were, like the way Giannis played, yeah, the way Chris Middleton played, yeah, we can understand that. Drew Holiday,
Hmm.
both of them.
So looking at the numbers, the Bucks averaged 111 points that finals against the
Yes,
Suns, but they gave up 109 against the Suns. So there was less defense being played. But as you mentioned, Middleton, Giannis, Holiday, even Brooke Lopez
and
could put up.
Connaughton hitting those threes.
Connaughton hitting the threes, right?
Grayson Allen, come on
Oh,
now.
I don't think he was on that team.
Grayson Allen wasn't on that team.
I
I could
don't
have
believe
sworn he was
so.
on that team.
No,
The
they still
championship
had
team.
DJ Augustin and Jeff Teague.
I could have sworn that Grayson Allen was on that championship team. But hey, we'll
I
find
don't
out.
know.
Someone's
We'll
going to let us
find
know
out.
in the comments or otherwise. But nevertheless, the Bucks won that championship. So now against these Denver Nuggets we're talking about, how does that game go? How many
Well,
games it takes
we,
for either
we
one to win?
we talk about dogs all the time on the court, right?
Yeah,
Drew Holiday is a dog.
yes, he is.
Nobody's going to get in his head or intimidate him.
PJ Tuck as
But
well.
no matter what Denver does, Drew Holiday is going to do his thing. He's going to play tough defense. He's going to hit big shots. And I think Giannis and Jokic could basically cancel each other out, and you have to look to the others. I would trust Holiday and Connaughton more than I would trust,
And Chris
uh,
Middleton.
and Middleton. But I don't consider him another. He's the Robin. But
Yeah.
Middleton and Murray might cancel each other out. It would come down to the others, I think. If KCP went off for the Nuggets or Michael Porter Jr. goes off for the Nuggets, I don't know. This one's a tough one. I think this one goes 7 also, but I
Really?
lean towards the Bucks.
Well, the Bucks did lead the league in scoring that year, over 120 points a game. But we do know the Bucks can score too. I mean, come on, it's not like they're a defensive stalwart. They're a middle of the pack kind of defense because their offense is that good. So yeah, I can, man. I don't want to say another 6 game series, another 4-2, and Denver losing again. But Denver's going to lose again. So whether it's 4-2 or 4-3, they're losing this one. So right now, between you and I, they're 0-2 against the past. Whoa. So what does that say about this past season and the teams that played against them?
I don't know. You mentioned the Bucks caught a lot of breaks.
Yes.
Maybe the Nuggets caught some as well. I don't know. I don't want to disparage the Nuggets. They swept the Lakers. They only lost 1 game against the Heat. They handled their business. I just don't think in this matchup that they will come out on top.
See, when it comes to them, going into the series, going into the playoffs, I had them as the odds-on favorite, whereas I didn't have the Milwaukee Bucks as the odds-on favorite going into the series. I think everybody, or at least most people, probably did have the Brooklyn Nets because they kind of figured out like all year long they'll finally come together. They'll finally come together. They'll finally come together. They didn't come together. The Bucks came together and won a championship.
Yeah, sometimes things just fall your way. It's up to you to take advantage of them. There's been other years where things have fallen a certain way for certain teams, and they didn't take advantage and they got bounced. So you have to give credit.
Yeah, of course, give credit where it's due. Championships are championships, but going in this fantasy matchup, I guess that we having right now, where we can see that 0-2 right now for the Denver Nuggets, the defending champions for the 2023 season. That's something else. But nevertheless, we move on in the terms of taking advantage of opportunity. The 2020 Lakers, they took advantage of an opportunity. They ended up playing in a bubble, one of the most, the most unconventional playoffs or even NBA seasons ever. They played 71 games, and we saw how it played out. We lived through it, all of us, and anyone who's watching this had lived through it, seeing how it came about. The season was stopped and then put back on track.
Yeah, those were crazy times.
Yes.
They were crazy games to watch. No one in the crowd, no crowd noise.
Nothing.
It was like watching an open gym run or something. It was weird. It was really weird. But the Lakers, they beat everybody else in the championship, so you have to give them their due. They were the champions. Whether you want to call them the bubble Lakers or whatever, they were the champs that year.
Yeah, I mean, the bubble Lakers, they were 52-19 on the season in just 71 games. They were first in the West. They were 16-5 in the playoffs that everyone else played in. and with everyone else had to deal with the same circumstance in terms of the way protocols were for COVID, whether it's the testing part of it, guys getting sick or guys not being sick or coming back from being sick, which Chris Paul was a couple, even the following season, COVID doesn't just go away because it says you don't have it. It still lingers about, and depending on who you are, it lingers about for the long term. But nevertheless, this Lakers team was that good for that time. And how do you compare them against this Denver Nugget team?
It's kind of tough. Are they playing in the bubble or do they have to travel? Because when you think about the Lakers, you're thinking about an older LeBron, a fragile AD.
Yeah.
They load manage and do all that stuff. But in the bubble, they play the game, they walk to their rooms or they go to the lunchroom or what, not a lot of stress there. But LeBron and AD, they were a monster combination. I believe LeBron almost averaged 30 and AD backed him up with 25.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was 55 plus from two players.
But the depth is going to be a problem because those two players will wear out. And of course, it's a good point you bring up about playing in the bubble or just playing in your home stadium or your home arena, because that real, as we talked about during the playoffs and the finals in particular, that real advantage of being in Mile High, the city of Denver, does matter. And now that's taken away from them playing in Florida in a bubble where the altitude has no issue.
So I think we could answer this question by answering this question. Which Heat team was better, this past year's or the bubble Heat? Whoa. Because the Lakers won in 6, the Nuggets won in 5. So if we think if this year's Heat team was better than that team, well, then the Nuggets win. But if that Heat team was better, then that changes things.
You know what? I think there's an argument to be made that this present or this past Heat team might have been better because there wasn't just Jimmy Butler just getting after it. I mean, he showed the reason why we call him a dog now more than anything is because of that bubble game and the way he just left everything on the floor. He tried to do it this time around and he didn't do it because, so he not necessarily deferred intentionally. It just ended up that way organically, deferring to others, and they were still able to go as far as they had gone as an 8th seed. So they got hot at the right time in the NBA, like other sports. If you get hot at the right time, whether you were an excellent team or a mediocre team during the beginning of the season, if you get hot at the right time, and that's during the playoffs, a lot of things can happen. That's how number 8 seeds get to the finals and push now the champions Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, so looking at the numbers, the Lakers averaged 110 points that finals.
Okay.
And they held the Heat to under 105. So they had some easy victories, although it did go 6 games.
Yeah, they had easy victories, but once again, I think it still comes down to the identity of what Miami has been defensively. Jimmy Butler pretty much being the only guy really hanging all out there during the bubble year, and they still lost. This time around, there was more help, even though there wasn't a Tyler Hero sighting. There was still more help, more players stepping up. Struss, as we mentioned earlier in the season, earlier during the playoffs, stepped up. They had players who can do it. It's just that Denver was that much better, and Joker is so far off the charts with his ability. And he has a Robin this time around with Jamal Murray. So this game here, though, between Denver and this Lakers team, I think I give this first one to Denver now. With AD and LeBron being the only two who can get the job done, I like the Batman and Robin scenario of a reliable Jamal Murray than a not reliable Anthony Davis.
Yeah, KCP, he's on both teams.
Oh,
he averaged 12.
That's true.
He averaged 12 in the 20 series against the Heat. He'd have to guard himself. And
sounds ridiculous, but true.
2023 KCP would have to shut down, hold him to less than 12.
Play in the mirror.
But still contribute more. No, but in all seriousness, I agree with you. I think the Nuggets, they were getting major contributions from Aaron Gordon or Michael Porter Jr. or Bruce Brown, Christian Brown on different nights. Their depth compared to the Lakers' depth would win it for them, I believe.
Yeah, and the playoffs, or especially in the finals, when it's the final plateau and all the wear and tear of the season really shows itself, you need that depth. You need that reliable depth. And I think Denver obviously has proven it during this past series in which they won their championship. And just knowing the history of Anthony Davis is the reason why I can't choose them, because you just don't know how long he's going to be around.
Yeah, but we have to assume he'd be around because he was around that
Yeah.
season. So I can't say, oh, he'd probably get injured. We have to assume that he would be around because he was around.
Well, the only reason why I say that, because right now the Denver Nuggets just winning the championship more recently, so I guess they get the more of the benefit of the doubt, being the defending champs, and we're taking people from the past. Well, Anthony Davis has shown he couldn't stay healthy all the way up until now. So if they're playing right now against these Denver Nuggets, you still have a half beaten up Anthony Davis trugging along. He wasn't
If
as
they
injured back then as he is right now, but he's injured now often.
if they had to play a full season, maybe he's not available come finals. Maybe
That's
they don't
true.
make the finals. You know, we talk about LeBron load managing. I I think he played 55, 56 games last year. Um, if they didn't have that break where they allowed their bodies to recuperate and rest, would they be able to go as hard?
That's
That's
true.
a big question.
But you know what? It's everyone in the NBA. Everyone gets the chance to benefit from that load management. It depends on what your coach really wants. And for the first time throughout our first three games, we agree on this one. The Denver Nuggets will beat the 2020 bubble Lakers. I mean, there were a lot of benefits there. They got a little bit more rest as well. The entire season was stopped and restarted. Now, granted, these guys had to get back into basketball shape in order to play, but it was still stopped a significant amount of time to where, you know what, that resting guys who might have been injured or coming back, or guys who might have been bumped and bruised, were able to get that rest they wouldn't have gotten under normal circumstances. So yes, Denver now 1-2 after the 2020 Lakers go down to them. So hey, moving on, what's going on now? The 2019 Raptors. Now this is a different story. 58-24 on the season, these Raptors were, and they were second in the East. And Kawhi Leonard and Kyle Lowry, bro, that's a team right there. And Kawhi was playing on
It
the
it is, but we have to mention KD was injured, and if Clay doesn't get injured, do they
yeah.
still win? I believe a healthy Clay, the Dubs still win that series.
You, you know what? Obviously, we can't play. What woulda, shoulda, coulda. Hell, this is all about what coulda, shoulda. Just doing this comparison. But yeah, I mean that's part of the NBA though. Guys getting injured, people getting injured, and kind of continue to move on. Players get injured, and the team, other guys get paid for a reason. You got to step up, and if you really worked on your depth, there's not too much of a drop off, and you're still able to grind it out and get the desired result, or at least put up your best effort. So I don't
Well,
know.
I
I
well I said that to say this. This would be the Nuggets' easiest victory. I think
You think so?
one of them. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, even though the Raptors averaged 111 points and they held the Warriors to 105.8.
Yeah.
Again, no, eh, they lost two of their three best players. So any team loses their two of their three best players going to struggle
Yeah,
offensively.
absolutely. And that even goes beyond depth, because you lose those types of players. Your depth isn't brought in to replace those guys. They're just brought in to do the best they can until those guys get back. And that wasn't what happened. I think Denver could beat this team, but I would say this would be the 7-game series that Denver would win. Not a 4-2. This will be a 4-3 in Denver's favor. Because also throughout the season, I think throughout the playoffs, this same Raptors team was 16-8. And out of all the teams I believe that we're doing right now, those are the most losses in the playoffs that any team has had. So yeah, I think that Denver wins this one.
I agree. Siakam played out of his mind that year. He averaged 20 in the finals. Not out of his mind, but he became a known quantity. He played a really strong series against the Warriors and made a name for himself. But they're dealing with Jokic.
Yeah. And dealing with Jokic is a different story. You just don't guard the center and think you got the job done. You still have to worry about his assist. You still have to worry about the magnet in the ball because the rebounds seem to just come right to him, even when he's not looking. I mean, seriously, this guy doesn't even have to go for the rebound. It just finds him as if he's Dennis Rodman. And then all of the things that he brings.
There's an art to rebounding. There's an art to it.
You know what, bro? There is. And Dennis Rodman, I remember seeing a video and even a couple of articles about him and how he determines what's going to happen with the ball. He sits there, watches the spin. He watches so many elements. And the layman would just think, just get it off the glass. When in reality, there's so much more to getting it off the glass than just getting it off the glass. And they get those rebounds for a reason. I don't know if Jokic goes that deep into it because I still see the ball just coming to him, but he has so many different facets to his game to where rebounding isn't the only thing you have to worry about. Scoring isn't the only thing you have to worry about. The assist. This guy gets steals at his height. He gets steals, multiple steals in a game.
Yeah, he does it all. He'll even block a shot here and there. You know, he's not.
Okay.
I'm not gonna say he's going to intimidate people, but he'll get his block
Double.
shots here and there. You know, how can he not, being 7'1" or whatever? I just think Jokic is too much of a problem. He has too much support from Murray, Porter Jr., KCP, guys off the bench. I just don't see Kawhi getting enough help. And again, if Clay doesn't go down in the series,
Yeah.
not prior to the series or earlier in the season, in the series, that changed the entire series. So I got Nuggets in 5 or 6.
Yeah, I can see the Nuggets pulling it off. I mean, I'll still say 7. Yeah, I'll go with the 7 deal. But anyways, I mean, Draymond Green, as you mentioned, if they had all their players with Golden State that year, you know, all their key players, it probably wouldn't have gotten that far. But it goes without saying that Draymond Green, he actually led everyone in assists with 223 assists. Now, this is not necessarily when we talk about Mr. Triple Single. You know, when you mention his name as being triple single, don't think he doesn't add as much as that goes. I mean, he does get those assists. I mean, he gets his blocks. He's known for the grit and the ruggedness that he brings to the table and the rebounding. But, God, I mean, that says a lot that he had that many assists and they still lost the game. But it wasn't a matter of him being able to make up for what was lost because what was lost was greater than assists.
He would have had to average 20 assists a game in that series because what they needed was more offensive punch. So he would have had to been getting guys layups left and right, you know, to make things easier on Steph and take some of the pressure. If you remember the one game and they lost it, I think Steph had 43 or 47 trying to do it himself. He just didn't have enough help, and they lost, I believe, by double digits that game.
And ultimately, they lost the entire series 4-2. And that's how the Raptors got their championship. I mean, there were a lot of storylines heading up into it with Kawhi Leonard hitting the buzzer beater and you know all of that. But hey, this is now a 2-2 after 4 teams. The Denver Nuggets of this year are 2-2, the defending champions, kind of showing that they're probably champions of not all time, but in recent memory, they may be up there with that, according to us. So that gives us a chance to move on to our next matchup, where we have a more daunting task for these Denver Nuggets, and that's the 2014 San Antonio Spurs. I mean, you know, you have an older Tim Duncan, but you have so many other pieces and parts that can just get the job done. And they did just that year, becoming champions themselves. 62-20. You're talking about a record not too far removed from the all-time record. And they actually won. They were first in the West, needless to say, and they were third defensively. We already know that's the signature of their team as well. And they put it all together. And they were 16-7 throughout the entire playoffs. Not too much to it. They just get the job done.
Yeah, they were on a mission in 14 after blowing it against the Heat in 13.
Yep.
Excuse me. As you mentioned, Duncan had a lot of help. Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker. Kawhi was starting to come into his own. He was earning the nickname The Claw because of his defensive abilities, and he was scoring also. They also had Danny Green, who could knock down threes. They dominated the Heat. They won in 5 games. So I think this one would be tough for the Nuggets. Jokic would do his thing, but who's going to stop Duncan?
No one. It's true. So I guess we're going back under 500 with this one. For the Denver Nuggets, hey, things look good in the beginning, but hey, let's go. I mean, yeah, that team there, that's as far as a name brand team, you're talking about Hall of Famers on that one team. See, we don't. The only Hall of Famer we could really point out right now on this Denver Nugget team is Jokic. That's it.
Right.
So until things move on and maybe Jamal Murray gets into the conversation, we're talking about, and this is an older San Antonio team. These are guys who are already seasoned, we're already established, and still working together. The chemistry is there, and of course, one of the greatest coaches of all time. That doesn't hurt, but obviously a dominant performance by them, and I see nothing less if they play Denver this time around. Jokic will get off, but no one else will get off. I mean, maybe even not Jamal Murray. I doubt even Jamal Murray has a Jamal Murray kind of game like he had during the playoffs against this fundamentally sound, tough San Antonio team.
Yeah, and team is the exact word to use for the 14 Spurs.
Yes.
When you look at the numbers, they averaged 105 points per game to the Heat's 91.6. Like I said, they dominated that series, and nobody averaged over 20. But you had Parker at 18, Manu at 17, and Tim Duncan at 15 and a half. And that's not even mentioning Kawhi or his contribution. It was a team effort. They played as a team, and they would win, I believe.
Yeah, not too much ego going on there with Pop being there. There's no such thing as an ego. He's going to just have these seasoned professionals who happen to be future Hall of Famers and now Hall of Famers in some of these cases, rolling through as they rolled through the playoffs that year against Portland 4-1, against OKC 4-2, a very good OKC team, by the way, and then Miami 4-1. I mean, this is what you expect from a team that knows how to play team basketball, and they just happen to be hella talented at an older age. Fine wine, whooping up on the championship, getting a championship, then whooping on Denver later on in the future. A blast from the past, beating on the present champs, and that's what we get.
I mean, you think, well, they didn't shoot as many threes back then as they do now, but they still averaged 105 points a game.
Yeah, that's what you
in the finals.
Oh, okay. Because I'm thinking you wouldn't even in the finals, you wouldn't think that much about that kind of a team. You think about just being fundamentally sound, doing the pick and rolls, not too much of that 3-point shooting. And as you say, you know what? That's even more of a point of how Steph Curry changed the game. Now, they don't do too much 3-point shooting. They didn't do it back then. We see how they're doing it now, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. Unless they move the 3-point line back. And even then, people are going to challenge themselves. You can have a half-court shot as a 3-point line now.
I remember hearing somebody a few years ago suggesting there should be a 4-point line.
I've heard that now before, but stop.
I mean, maybe if you shoot it from the other side of the half court, they give them an extra point. But
this isn't the carnival. This isn't a circus, man. You're going to get yourself a stuffed animal for hitting the ball, hitting a shot from like a way back.
Bring back the red and white ball, red, blue, and white ball.
With the old ABA days or even WNBA days. But nevertheless, Denver, you're now 2-3. 2-3 after 5 games of teams from the past. Hey, there's no shame there. Those are great teams. These are talking about some generational teams. When you talk about a few of these teams outside of the Raptors, I mean, that's legit right there. And so we go with the next matchup, which will be the 2013 Miami Heat. All right, they were 66-16. This was the one I wasn't supposed to win. Not 1, not 2, not 3. They had that mantra on their mind, and they were the number 1 in the East. Needless to say, with a record like that, and they got the job done. They put a lid on the cap, winning a championship.
They did. If you remember that series, though, I say the Spurs blew it. Duncan had a layup to ice the game, and he missed it. They ended up losing. Game goes to 7, and they lost game 7. I got the Nuggets in this series.
Really?
Yeah, just because I believe the Spurs had them. When does Tim Duncan miss a layup? It's just so crazy. But he missed it, and I talked about taking advantage. The Heat definitely took advantage. So respect to them. They won that championship, but I believe Jokic ain't missing no layup by himself. You saw all the tough shots he hit this year. There ain't going to be no missed layups to give him an opportunity. The Spurs had a chance to close the door. They left it open, and the Heat took advantage. I don't see that happening against the Nuggets.
Wow, I guess we're in the opposite side of the spectrum with
It
these.
had to happen. It had to happen.
Yeah, it had to happen because the Heat, I believe, was a damn good team that year. And of course, we could look at that one game against the Spurs. Actually, the entire series 4-3 in which the
I
Heat
mean, they
won.
struggled. It took them
They
7.
did struggle, but man, we've seen Denver struggle against a team that doesn't score much at all. And that was, I mean, struggle on occasion against this Miami Heat team that doesn't score much at all. I mean, this Heat team, not only were they offensively up there, defensively, well, they were up there as well. I mean, they were what?
Well,
They no.
let's go. Let's go to the numbers.
Okay, let's do the numbers.
The Heat averaged 97 points per game that series.
Yep.
The Spurs averaged 97.7 points per game. Out of all these teams we're talking about, they're the only champion to average less points per game in the finals versus their opponent.
Because weren't they more of a defensive team, just like a lot like this Miami Heat team? Because even with 66 wins on the season, this Miami Heat team had a pace of out of 30 teams, they were number 23 in terms of their pace. They weren't pushing it up the floor. They just had players who can do that, and they were able to turn it on and off, and they can do it not when they wanted to, but when the opportunity presented itself, they did score the points.
I'm just saying, I think they lucked out, and I think the numbers back that up. So I'm going with the Nuggets. I don't see them slowing down. I don't care if LeBron was closer to his prime or in his prime. He's not stopping Jokic. People want to say, oh, he can guard 1 through 5. Bullshit. I want to see him guard Moses Malone. Moses Malone will foul him out in the first half.
We already know what the deal is with that. Come on, you talking about Moses Malone. I think your LeBron hate is coming through on this.
I'm just saying. Like I mentioned the other day, it's his fans. He can guard 1 through 5.
You turn into a different person.
When the center's standing out in the corner, or when the power forward's standing out in the corner because he's a stretch 4, he ain't guarding no real centers. Get out of here.
Yeah, but I tell you what, though, that same season, LeBron did average. I mean, he did have over.
Did you see him guard Tim Duncan? Did he guard Tim Duncan?
Who, LeBron?
Yes.
I don't think so.
No, he didn't. So don't tell me he can guard 1 through 5, or else they would put him on Duncan and shut him down.
I just think that they probably.
I'm not saying you did.
I mean, I'm just saying the better team. They won the game. They did go 7 games. I just thought the right team won, and they proved it right there. LeBron that year was shooting over 40% from 3-point range. He was just on fire that year. And you still had Chris Bosh, and you still had even Mario Chalmers that was on that team. And he contributed well, like 8, I think a little 8 points a game. So
I got more numbers for you.
Hey, wasn't Ray Allen on that team too?
Yep.
Yeah.
But LeBron averaged 25, Wade averaged 19, and Bosh averaged 11.9. So they weren't really scoring too much.
And that defense showed up. Someone had to play the defense. I mean, Pat Riley again. Anything related to Pat Riley means defense is involved, at least as of the past 30 years. And this Miami team was able to do it. So you say Denver wins against this Miami team. I'm saying Miami wins against this Denver team. So that's how it's going to end with that?
That's how it ends.
Well, I guess we can agree to disagree and just move on from there to come up with our final matchup of the day. The 2011 Dallas Mavericks against the Denver Nuggets of today.
I think European basketball fans would salivate over this matchup.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. Come on now. The place will be sold out indoors and outdoors. You know what I mean? So I can dig that one there. I mean, the Mavericks that year was 57-25. They were, let me see. I mean, the divisions weren't what they were, recently as far as East, West, and all that. They were Southwest. And anyway, they were 57-25 that year. And we already know Dirk Nowitzki was involved, and Dirk Nowitzki he wasn't the same player, by the way. He was older, a little injury prone, but he got his championship, and it was all about him that year. Jason Kidd the same way, an older statesman, an elder statesman coming, getting his championship as well. Now, this is a game where the right team did win, but going against this team, against Denver, I think Denver wins this game.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Jokic, Murray, and the guys would be too powerful offensively. The Mavericks only averaged 94.7 points in that finals.
Wow. So we know that Denver adapts to whoever or whatever you're doing. And we say they have the parts to do that. And with Jokic being so diverse, we see why they have the parts to be able to adjust. The little chameleon thing they have going on. But yeah,
No,
I agree.
their defense though, they did dominate. They won in 6, but they held the Heat to 92 points per game. So
19,
not a lot of offense in that
no,
finals.
not a lot of offense. But would you say even going back that far, you still had a different NBA defensively, which is not what we have now? When off, I don't. We could go back to the '90s and talk about the Pat Riley defense with the Knicks and all that. 2011, is it is there anything similar in 2011 that we can see today and kind of correlate?
I don't believe so. They shot 3-pointers, but not like today. I mean,
No.
teams shoot 30 plus a game now.
So that's why I can take this and kind of compartmentalize, knowing that this isn't today, but that team there playing defense the way they did. I can see this Denver team because of that diversity that they have, and primarily with Jokic being as diverse as he is, and I guess the West isn't typically known for playing defense. I mean, outside of San Antonio, at least historically, the West wasn't known for necessarily playing that much defense. It's always been more of a wide open game. And so, yes, Denver beats this 2011 Dallas Mavericks team. But hey, if you found a silver lining, a lot of Europeans will be happy about this game. They have all their sons in this game. I mean, some of the most prominent players ever in their history in the NBA showing up. So I guess that's helpful.
Yeah, for this matchup, Jokic and Murray are a better duo
Yeah.
offensively than Dirk and Terry. Jason Terry did score 27 in the closeout game, but he only averaged 18 for the series. So I just don't believe Dirk would get enough help.
And didn't that Dallas Maverick team beat Kobe Bryant and those Lakers too? They swept them that year.
I don't recall if they swept them, but yeah, they did have to go through the Lakers.
Yeah, and so Kobe was there, man. Kobe tried to will his team. He probably didn't have the team he needed to do it, but he did have some solid names in that team. Derek Fisher, the older guy, was still there. Meta World Peace was still there. Lamar Odom was there, and they got swept.
Yeah, well, we had to stop at 11 because then we started getting into the Kobe Gasols
Oh yeah,
and the KG Allen Pierce.
Then you can't compare anymore.
I don't think I
Then you
don't
can't
think it'd
compare
be worth
anymore.
it. I don't think it'd be worth it.
No.
We're talking about teams. Well, at least Kobe and Gasol multiple championships. So Nuggets
there
have
you
more to
go.
prove.
So there you go. Right now, I think between you and I, the Denver Nuggets, at least for me, they're 3-3 after the 6 matchups. We should have had that 7th one just to break the tie, kind of like the Supreme Court, an odd number. But hey, we actually did have 7.
I was
So,
gonna say, yeah, we had 7.
oh yeah.
So
So
let's go. We'll go over it again.
yeah, let's go over it again.
So
Just for
Warriors,
safekeeping.
Warriors, we agreed on
Yeah.
they lose. Bucks, we agreed on they
Yes.
lose. Lakers, bubble Lakers, we agreed on they'd win.
They win that one, Denver. That was
Right.
the first one we
So
agreed
they're
on.
2-1. We agreed they beat the Raptors.
Yes, that's 2.
2-2. We agreed they lose to the Spurs.
And yeah.
2-3.
Yes,
We disagreed on the
on the
13 Heat.
I think the Heat beats them.
And I think they beat the Heat.
Yes, exactly. We kind of missed.
We disagreed on that one.
That one.
And then we agree on the
On
Mavericks.
the Mavs. Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey,
So we only disagreed on one this time.
yeah, we need to have more disagreements, man. We can't be in sync all the time. We got to come up with some type of topics where we know that we're kind of like talk about the 2000 or the 2001 Miami Hurricanes versus the 94-95 Nebraska Cornhuskers. We only can disagree on something like that.
Oh man, we would need a 2-hour show probably.
Yeah, exactly, man. Phenomenal teams, both of them. But hey, we'll get to that one day. Any closing words? Any closing words on this show here? I think it was the time went by fast. I mean, talking about these teams, kind of reminiscing, taking you back to the blast from the past, and looking at this Denver team, which is, well, comparable. I mean, reasonable. They could be compared to fairly against these past teams we talked about.
Yeah, I believe so. I think this was a good good list of teams to compare them to. Didn't want to compare them unfairly to anyone, especially when you go back different eras.
Yeah.
It's tough to do that. You're always gonna get a difference of opinion. It's like liberals and conservatives. People are gonna fall one way or the other automatically, no matter what. So, yeah, better to leave it alone.
Well, that puts a lid on this show today. I'm Trav. He's biased. This is a Sports Bag Bros podcast, our 21st episode. We will be coming with another episode tomorrow, which is Thursday, which is number 22. And that one, we may talk a little bit of college football, maybe a little bit of recruiting. We got some things that we're going to put together for a live stream. So I will be putting a notice up there. I will be putting a notice up so that anywhere it could live, you could see that we're going to have our live stream. So if you want to join us, you can do just that. So make sure you do join us if you're in any of our groups, whether Facebook or just watching us on YouTube, hearing this. Go ahead, show up, live stream. We want to hear from you. Let's have the conversation. Until next time, peace.